Why do you play the RPGs that you do? Do you bounce around between several, or do you stick with one for years at a stretch? How many RPG systems are you aware of outside of Dungeons and Dragons? There are thousands of game systems out there, and each of them is better or worse at different things. It takes time to find out what's best for your Flash Gordon style space opera, your dark X-Files Lovecraftian horror, or your Game of Thrones by way of Kurosawa samurai movies. Hell, there are even games for people pretending to be cats from Cats the Musical. There's no reason to build a whole new system from scratch for managing your post-apocalyptic tribe when Apocalypse World is right there. If there's so many options, why do so many people try to cram everything into D&D? I think it might just be simple familiarity. They already know the system, and another one might require buying 3, 4, 5 more books. Plus, it already does everything, right? For me, trying to use D&D to tell every type of story is trying to make every video game play using the same core engine. Can you imagine trying to play Undertale but with Call of Duty's gun mechanics? Sure, it's possible for a given definition of possible, but it's going to be better at doing what it was designed for. I mean, would you try to introduce Pokemon mechanics into Alien Isolation and keep that horror feeling? Look, she just won't get in the ball. Because of all of this, I think it's important to take a step back, look at D&D, see what it does well and what it doesn't do well. Then we'll branch out into other options. Now, for this purpose, I'm going to be talking specifically about 5th edition D&D, but most of this will apply to other editions in some form or another. Dungeons & Dragons is, of course, the titan of the industry, making up over 50% of the sales on Roll20 alone. And D&D is great at what it was designed for. Conan the Barbarian style tomb raiding and combat. Destroy the zombies, kill the beholder, get the gold, level up, do it again. Now, before you get into the comments, it can, of course, do a lot of other things too. But let's take a step back and look at the core gameplay loop. This focus on killing monsters and leveling up is what makes D&D a crunchy game, as some people say. It is more focused on using the mechanics to drive the action. Dungeon Masters are advised about how many encounters to have per day, how to balance them, and while they're not always combat, they frequently are. Encounters, in terms of game design, are about spending resources, be they hit points, spell slots, potions, or anything else. Talking to the barkeep about rumors doesn't really do that. When we start looking at the mechanics as well, the class abilities and spells are mostly used for combat. It is also explicitly a high magic setting. In the 2024 edition, there are, out of 48 archetypes of all the classes, 4 that don't have any magic built into them in any way. 4. Looking at some of the dice mechanics as well, rolling a d20 gives you a nice even spread of results. Barring any interference from the dice gods, you're as likely to roll a 20 as a 1 as a 7, and this leads itself to big failures and big successes, which is fun and exciting. Characters also tend to have more cushion to survive the bad rolls. And of course, big successes are always fun. Now, what do I mean by cushion? Think about how many die rolls there are in a given round of combat versus a social encounter. A few bad rolls fighting some goblins will generally even out with some good ones as well, in a way that talking with their king and rolling a persuasion check tends not to. Now, of course, some GMs will make some house rules to even things out, but I think that kind of highlights the point of the design that's built into the game. So, based on the strengths of D&D, we want to find the most action-oriented version of our story. I actually find the Marvel movies to be a fantastic way to look at developing these kind of stories. Sure, they cover all kinds of genres, from Winter Soldier's spy thriller to Doctor Strange's extraplanar mysticism, or Spider-Man Homecoming's coming-of-age story. But at the end of the day, if there is an MCU movie with no big action set pieces, they never use their powers, would you walk away feeling satisfied? What if they never use their powers again? A Hulk movie needs smashing. D&D is the same. This is why D&D tends to fall flat for certain applications. While it may take inspiration from Lord of the Rings, it's really more of a Renaissance-era superhero game. Sure, you could use the system to run a political intrigue campaign based on the crown, but anyone who wanted to play a fighter, barbarian, druid, ranger, artificer, they're going to be kicking the dirt while the charismatic characters do their thing. And even if you had a party of all bards and rogues and sorcerers, most of their abilities are combat forward, either meant to do damage or help other players do damage. This game would largely break down to rolling persuasion, deception, maybe intimidation, and a handful of the spells that are available. At this point, you're only using 10% of the system. On the other hand, if you want to run a game where every encounter is potentially deadly, You're pushing against a system that drives characters towards combat as a solution. As a player, I want to cast Fireball on the squad of guards and roll a fistful of d6s. That's why I'm playing a sorcerer. Beyond that, I'm more confident in the results of combat than I am on rolling persuasion. It's more controlled in my favor because, as stated before, I have a lot more rolls. I have a lot more abilities I can use to influence that outcome. Typically, this sort of underutilization of the system points that there may be something else better suited to our needs. If you want to run something about the power struggles between nobles, where wit is sharper than sword, you might want to look at other games, perhaps something that has an etiquette skill, bonuses for family bloodlines, an honor system, or even something that treats persuasion as something that takes finesse and patience, not a single die roll. This same sort of thinking also applies to house ruling your game. Now, I'm all about adjusting games to fit the style that you want. But by the same principle, if you find yourself changing more of the game than you're keeping, you may as well just try something new altogether. There's certainly more ways to make D&D more low magic and combat more lethal, but there is a breaking point. If all magic is wild and uncontrollable, why would anyone ever play a sorcerer or a cleric or a wizard? They'd be penalized for doing what their class is supposed to be good at without a meaningful alternative. Now, we can total all this up to see D&D as a crunchier on the side of the scale game with a lot of gamist, narrative, and simulationist aspects. Well, hold on. What do those mean? Well, gamist, dramatist or narrative, and simulationist are three terms coined by Alain Lapalme in order to kind of quantify these sort of aspects of a game. See, back in the ancient year of 1995, Alain Lapalme created what we now call the threefold model of RPGs, and these have been built upon to what we now talk about today. Now, this is not meant to be a strict categorization tool, but a way to orient yourself in the general landscape of game design. It's a way of looking at the way games execute their vision. So how do we define the furthest ends of these on a spectrum? A gamist game will appeal to people who like to win contests. They can play strategically and use their system knowledge to beat NPCs and other players. The thrill is in the challenge. Games where you make builds for your character, where mechanical balance is key, and where complex systems tend to be simplified for quick and easy play, such as falling from a great height or hacking into a system, are more likely to be on the gamist side of the spectrum. Narrative games, on the other hand, are for the theater kids. The point of these games is not to win, it's not to beat the campaign, it's just to tell a good story. The death of your character might be a great moment you're looking forward to, not a sign of failure. Rules in these games tend to be light, favoring GM judgment in order to keep things moving quickly, and letting players stay in the moment. They may also reward strong character play, perhaps a mechanical benefit for playing into a character's flaw or weakness. Almost all games focus on a story, but narrative ones tend to be more about creating climactic situations and less about replicating economies or any sort of idea of fairness. Games on the simulationist side of the spectrum are more about creating a cohesive little pocket universe that the players can interact with and in turn interacts with them in believable and consistent ways. A player who likes simulationist games is more than happy to roll on multiple charts to get the most accurate result, regardless of how it turns out for their character. The immersion is the most important part, and metacurrencies like fate points or fortune points or inspiration tend not to be used. Now, at the center of all of these, I would consider the original Dungeons & Dragons, not because it is a perfect balance of all of these, but it simply defined the space. Gary and Dave weren't setting out to make a narrative game or a simulation of a fantasy world. They were just trying something out, and it clicked for people. It's from that first edition starting point that other game designers came in and started pulling it in different directions, making their games more simulationist, more narrative, or more gamey, depending on their personal tastes. No game fits neatly into a single point, and I want to reiterate, these are not categories. These are points of reference. And where a given game falls anywhere on the spectrum is not only up to the game's mechanical design and what's written in the rulebooks, but also how it plays at the table for a specific group. I've run the same system for multiple groups, and some like to focus on the tactics and maximizing damage, and others use the mechanics as a base for their roleplay. People also have different definitions of what these terms actually mean, or whether a specific mechanic is more gamist or simulationist. It's imperfect. However, I still think it's a useful way to look at different games and find out what's going to fit best for your table. High fantasy is a common enough genre, but are your players the type that want to pore over spell lists and equipment, or are they more interested in unionizing the goblins against King Clark? Now, a way you can look at any game and get a sense of kind of what it's about is to look at the character sheet. Most character sheets are designed in a way to put the most important mechanics front and center. The front page of your D&D 5th edition character sheet has your ability scores, bonuses, attacks, and damage. By comparison, Traveler's character sheet is dominated by skills, while it still does have a section for armor and weapons. Something like City of Mist has no space for attack bonuses or even an inventory. These things are less important to the kinds of stories that the game engine was designed to tell. Instead, City of Mist has a crew section of the sheet, meant to highlight the shared goals and bonuses of everyone in the team, as well as a focus on the characters' mysteries and identity. Researching and reading about these takes a lot of work, and you already know D&D, right? And your players are sure to grumble about learning another game. But if nothing else, learning and reading about these will help you get a better sense of system design and help you be better at running the game of your choice. Some parts of games can be ripped out whole and put into your favorite system. I'm a big fan of the faction mechanics of Blades in the Dark, and I will happily put that into any other game I run. It is an ongoing journey to find games that work for your playstyle, for your table, and the stories that you want to tell. Tastes change, and no system's going to keep your players satisfied for years without the occasional break for something new. The more you know about game design, the more you know what kind of stories work best for the system that you're playing, and that's going to make you a better game master overall. Well, that's just about all the time we have. If you have any questions, concepts, or problems, you can leave them in the comments below or shoot us an email at biscuitwolfgames@gmail.com. You can also find us on Blue Sky at Biscuit Wolf Games, and you can find our supplements at itch.io and TTRPG under the Biscuit Wolf banner.